Welcome to Focus Israel. Late Monday night, U.S. President Barack Obama received Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the White House. A number of unusual circumstances surrounded the meeting, which has led to intense media speculation about what was actually discussed. However, it's safe to assume that one of the main topics was the peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. I recently spoke with the Israeli Arab journalist Khaled Abu Toameh, the Jerusalem Post reporter for Palestinian affairs, to get a clearer idea of how to interpret the statements made by the Palestinian leadership the last few days. Is Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas serious when he threatens to not stand for re-election in January?
Well, so far it doesn't really appear that he's very serious, because Mahmoud Abbas is threatening to drop out of a race or out of an election that he knows he can't even hold. How can you hold a free and democratic election when Hamas is banning you from holding the election in the Gaza Strip? If Mahmoud Abbas really wanted to quit, who's preventing him? Mahmoud Abbas's message is, please hold me back, please prevent me. He's actually inviting pressure from the Americans and the international community on Israel.
So what will happen if he indeed does not stand for re-election? Who's next in line?
Well, so far we don't see a new leader emerging. Ever since Abbas made his declaration that he's not running in the next election, we see that his Fatah faction is rallying behind him and saying, we won't accept anyone else. Mahmoud Abbas is our only candidate. Mahmoud Abbas does not belong to himself. He belongs to the Palestinian people, to Fatah. The message that Fatah is sending to others is Mahmoud Abbas is the only candidate, which means Salam Fayyad, don't think that you can get this job. Don't even think of running. So Fatah itself is saying we're not going to allow anyone else to take over.
So Mahmoud Abbas has also threatened to dissolve the Palestinian Authority and declare that the peace negotiations have failed. What would be the result of such a move?
Well, I mean, if you are going to announce the dismantlement of the Palestinian Authority, then you might as well just go home. It would actually be a self-destructive move. Mahmoud Abbas will be the first to pay the price, because he will be the president of a non-existent Palestinian Authority. And then, we will have chaos and anarchy in the Palestinian territories. I don't see what's the point in dismantling a Palestinian authority or government when you don't have an alternative. What is the alternative to that? He hasn't prepared an alternative. So if I were Mahmoud Abbas, I'd be very careful. It's one thing to say that the peace process has failed. I think everyone knows that it has failed, but it's another thing to issue such threats. It's not the first time that Mahmoud Abbas makes such a threat. I think it's only an empty threat again. These threats by Mahmoud Abbas to dismantle the Palestinian Authority, to quit, to drop out of the race, these are all threats aimed at pressuring the Americans so that they in turn will pressure the Israelis to make concessions. I see them as empty threats.
Rumors have also circulated the last few days that suggest that Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Salam Fayyad is planning to unilaterally declare statehood, and that he has a secret understanding with U.S. President Barack Obama on this. What are the chances of that actually happening?
Well, in order to declare a state, first you have to build institutions, and you have to reunite the West Bank with Gaza, and you have to establish government, and you have to show the world that you are capable. If Salam Fayyad achieves all these things, and to me it seems a far-fetched goal, then, who's preventing him? Why not? Why do we forget that a Palestinian state was already declared in 1988 by the Palestinian parliament in exile? Again, if you can't deliver on something, don't promise. We don't need empty promises. Salam Fayyad should be involved in building nationhood, statehood, institutions. Once he finishes, he should come to the world and say, listen folks, I have just prepared my people for statehood. I have built institutions. I have built good government. Let's now sit with Israel and talk about a Palestinian state. Unilateral moves do not serve the peace process. If the Palestinians or Salam Fayyad declares a state unilaterally, it's not going to help. You have to do it in agreement with Israel.
You and your family live across the Green Line. Are you worried about your personal future?
Look, I don't know any lines. I don't know any colors. I live in Jerusalem. I don't care which side of the border I'm in. There's no reason why I should be worried about my future. I'm happy to live inside Israel. I'm happy to be an Israeli citizen. If I were given the choice between living in a Palestinian state or inside Israel, I'd rather live inside Israel. This is my home. I'm not going to move out of here. I don't care who is in power. Israel, Palestine, call it whatever you want, as long as no one is interfering with my right to be over here. I have absolutely no problem with it. But, as I told you, if you ask me on a personal basis, what do I prefer? I prefer to live in a country of law and order and where there's democracy. And that's Israel.
Thank you very much.
Most welcome.
Israeli Navy SEALs boarded a ship last week outside of Cyprus, which subsequently turned out to carry hundreds of tons of weapons and ammunition destined for the terrorist organization Hezbollah in Lebanon. The merchant ship Frankop was on its way from Egypt to Syria when it was intercepted by the Israeli Navy last week. After having asked for the captain's permission to inspect the cargo, weapons and ammunition was found in several of the containers on the ship. The ship was then guided to the Israeli harbor Ashkelon so that all the containers could be inspected. A total of 500 tons of weapon and ammunition was found in at least 36 of the containers on the ship. 3,000 Katyusha rockets with a range of 40 kilometers, more than 30,000 grenades of different kinds, and over 500,000 rounds of ammunition for automatic rifles. Strong evidence ties Iran to the cargo of weapons, for example the ship's manifest, the labels on the containers, the fact that the containers belong to IRISL, Islamic Republic of Iran shipping lines, and that a large part of the ammunition was made in Iran. UN Security Council Resolution 1747 forbids export and commerce of weapons with Iran. Changing subjects in Focus Israel. The International Christian Chamber of Commerce, ICCC, is a global business network. Focus Israel's reporter in Sweden, Fredrik Larsson, recently interviewed Dag Wilund, chairman of ICCC Sweden, who recently attended the President's Conference in Israel.
Tell us, what were you doing in Israel?
I was invited to a President Conference that Shimon Peres arranged with the theme of Facing Tomorrow. And invited a lot of people around the globe to come together and think about tomorrow, and especially Israel's role in the tomorrow's world.
What was the most fascinating thing that you bring?
In the invitation, Shimon Peres wrote that in the most difficult circumstances, wonderful opportunity could emerge. And then it said, but that are for those with a loving heart and an optimistic spirit. And actually, I've met a lot of people with a loving heart and an optimistic spirit. But if I continue that question a bit, Shimon Peres also said a little joke in one of the sessions. He said that a lot of Israelis are angry about Moses, that he should have remained in Southern Arabia, because that's where the oil was, the resources were. But God was so clever that he brought us into this land where there's nothing, no natural resources. That means we need to use our brain. And wow, what kind of brains I met there. They were really thinking in a new directions and outside the context and such things.
Did you get any specific goals or anything like that anybody uttered?
Yeah. Even in the opening session, Benjamin Netanyahu stood up and said, I have a challenge to you. In 10 years, I want to see Israel absolutely independent of oil. and I will put on all the political resources I could do, but I know you are there, but keep on going.
So 10 years, huh?
10 years.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for answering these questions.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Whedon, and that's all from Focus Israel for today. See us again next week.